want to hear everyone's different perspectives and let everyone know that they're not alone.
It gives me hope for a lot of people because I know there's people that really struggle with it.
Do things that you want to do to influence the world in the way you want.
Go out of your way to educate yourself by watching the show.
Everybody's always going to be struggling with mental health, yet nobody will know about it.
Kids Are Talking has given me an outlet to share my opinion and talk to people from all over the world.
You're awesome. You're doing a great job. You're amazing. You're doing the best you can. I love you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Kids Are Talking. Tonight, we have a great show for you because as you can see tonight, kids are talking about boundaries. We have Fraya Mortensen joining us, and I'm just super excited. We've been watching her on Instagram and just happy to have her on the show and to talk about boundaries. So let me bring her out. Fraya, let's see. No, you're not out yet. There you go. Fraya, how are you?
Michael. Hello, Michael. Wonderful.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for letting me be here.
Yeah, of course. So, you know, I see all of your reels, right, on Instagram and and on TikTok, and you're talking about boundaries. And I just want to say everything you do is awesome. And thank you so much. Because I think what you do is so inspiring to a lot of people, even that don't even talk to you. So you're doing great work. So keep it up. But tell me a little bit about, you know, what this whole, what's got you started on boundaries?
You know, I've been coaching people for over 20 years, and it started in that field of correctional services, where there's people that were not following other people's boundaries, and it was getting them in conflict with the law. So that's where my career started.
Legally.
Right? Yeah, exactly. You know, just respecting people's rights and ownership of their bodies and all these other things that are at that extreme end of boundaries. But you know what, Michael? I've been coaching people across the world now, as mostly empathic people. And one of the things that highly sensitive people really struggle with a lot is setting healthy boundaries, because we don't want to upset anyone. We don't want to create any conflict. Sometimes it's difficult to express what our needs are to other people. So we'll oftentimes just go along, do what everyone else wants us to do at the expense of our own well-being and our own needs. So I just saw that this was a huge opportunity to start to educate and teach people about boundaries.
Well, I think I'm one of those people because I'm definitely a yes man. I try not to be, but I think I maybe I don't have the boundaries. Maybe I'll learn something from you. So, but yeah. So thanks for coming. So let's bring out some of our panelists. We have Lauren, Jesse, and Natalie here. So let me bring them out, and we'll hear what they have to say about boundaries. Welcome, everybody.
Hi.
So Jesse, I heard you when we told you about the show. You said you were super excited. So why don't you know what about the show and talking about boundaries? What got you interested in talking about all this?
Oh, that's a great question. I find myself having a lot of difficulties, especially setting work and personal boundaries. I work 2 jobs. One's full-time, one's part-time. I work full-time as a camp counselor, part-time at a restaurant, doing busing, waiting, anything that needs to be done. And I find it really, really difficult to set boundaries during the day, to make time for my friends, because I always feel the need to work. And so the topic of boundaries is very personal to me. Also, I'm going off to college next year, and I want to be able to set healthy boundaries with my parents. And I was looking for advice, but at the same time, I have a little bit of experience talking to my parents. We've had a couple deep conversations about how often I'm going to call, that I can tell them anything, that they're trustworthy people. And I really love this subject. I feel it's really real and true to my heart, and something everyone can relate to.
Fraya, does that sound like the typical boundary issues that you hear all the time?
You know what? I'm super impressed that Jesse has this grasp already at this young age, because to tell you the truth, people aren't exploring and setting boundaries until much later in life. So the fact that you got a leg up on your time boundaries with your parents, I like what I'm hearing. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Natalie, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again. How are you doing with boundaries? Do you think you have healthy boundaries, or are you still working on that?
Yeah. So it's one of the reasons that I was really excited to be on this show is that I've always identified as an empath myself. So Freya, when I discovered your social media, I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. Absolutely need to talk to her. But like Jesse said, I am going into my second year at college. So I kind of struggled this past year with all the issues that she was talking about. And just, I feel like at college, a lot of friendship boundaries are kind of blurred because you're living with all these people. So it's a totally different sphere than you're usually used to. So yeah, I would definitely say that it's been a journey for me, and I'm excited to learn more.
Great. Well, I know I always had trouble with roommates, so I'm sure that's a challenge for boundaries.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Freya, how do you do that with when you're living with someone that you're really not always wanting to live with?
It comes down to that alone time that you need, right? I mean, I have a daughter who's 14 who just came back from a week at camp, and she says my social battery is drained.
Yeah.
Because you know you want to be able to say, I just need some alone time. I just need some quiet, and you know, if you can't express that, then you suffer a little bit.
So it's about voicing that, right? Standing up for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard. It's hard for me.
It is. It's absolutely hard. Yeah. Why people don't do it.
Lauren, what are your boundaries?
I think I probably have a lot of boundaries, a lot of extreme boundaries. And so boundaries aren't a problem for me, but maybe how intense they are might be.
Oh, so you feel like you have too many? Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
I like my boundaries. People have told me it's excessive. Let's put it there.
Freya, do you think is too many boundaries? Is that too much, or is that just taking care of yourself?
Oh no, sometimes we can be too rigid with our boundaries. So it's a balance, right? Sometimes, and this is all part of testing them out. This is how we learn. And our boundaries change over the course of our life, right? They're flexible. They're subject to evolving and changing. And what you used to be really strict about, you're not anymore. Yeah, but sometimes we can go a little overboard, and it's hard. I would love to hear what these boundaries are that Lauren has that people say are excessive. You know, I wonder what they are, and if they really are excessive, or if people are overreacting a little bit to her boundaries.
Lauren, what are these excessive boundaries you have?
I won't get into all of them, but
if we're crossing the boundaries by asking you, just let us know.
Now, I think there's some that have to do with mental health that I'm very strict about, and that's just because those are too personal for me to have people cross. But there's boundaries where I don't like being touched a lot. So like I have a friend that's she's recently started understanding that I don't like touch. So she'll ask me if it's a touching day or not. Because even just like her hand on my arm is too much. So stuff like that, and that's, I guess, low level. I can get pretty strict about some other things, but I don't know if I'll go into detail.
Yeah. So you've got some physical and social, emotional boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, so long as, you know, I always say boundaries aren't about telling other people what to do. It's about what you will do, right? So if you've got this friend, they know, hey, I don't like physical touch. I don't like hugs. I'm not a huggy person. You're going to have to ask. and they respect that and like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And or maybe they give you a hug and like, oh yeah, I forgot you have that boundary. Oops, sorry. I'll try to remember next time. I'll just ask you next time. And then they get better and they you can tell that they're responding to it. And so because it's like if we want to continue to hang out, you got to respect my boundary of I don't really like all these hugs and physical touch stuff. It's too much for me. But hey, go ahead and hug all sorts of other people. That's fine if they're fine with that. I'm not telling you can't hug any people anymore. Just me. Okay, just me.
Natalie, what do you think about this? Do you have do people react differently to your boundaries?
Yeah, so like I was saying about like living together, I lived in this very large building with like 22 floors, and almost all of my friends lived in that building just because of the nature of things. And it was really hard telling people that like I wanted alone time, like don't come knock on my door, like don't come into my room, like please just leave me alone. But I do think that setting like a rigid boundary, like having like specifics, like okay, on this day I need to be left alone, on this day I'm going to be studying, like you can't come in. I think that really helped for me, but I, like Fraya said, like it was definitely a learning process for them to kind of understand that it really did bother me when I needed that alone time and people were like kind of bothering me, you know?
Yeah.
Jesse, what are you doing preparing for the living with people situation that you're going to be in next year?
Well, I mean, I don't want to badmouth my roommate. I get it. I totally need my alone time. Typically, I work out to get my alone time. However, sometimes I can see how difficult it might be for me. I guess I'll have to try new things in order to set my boundaries. A tie on a door can mean different things, but maybe it can mean that. I'm living in a small space with people, and any advice Natalie has, I'm willing to take. I think I'm going to have to be more vocal and communicate about it, though.
What is your advice, Natalie?
So I didn't have like a roommate. I had a suite mate, so I'm not the best on like that, like in-room boundaries, because I know that's a big one. But I think just my only advice would be communication, because I think sometimes I struggle with like saying no to people, and I'll be like, oh, you can come, but maybe just for a little bit and stuff like that. And then as the year went on, I kind of was just like, no, okay, please don't come. So I think that like just being clear with what you actually want and not expecting people to like read your mind was really important for me.
Mm-hmm. It's good to hear. That's really good to hear. Thank you.
Fraya, what do you think about how Natalie's handling this?
Yeah, I love how Natalie was like, you can't expect people to know. You know what you think is just normal and everyone else thinks the same. They don't. You have to communicate it. And you can be a role model for this, right? Like being a role model for setting boundaries and, without the guilt, because that will come along. Oh, I feel so bad how we say these things, how they come out. It's okay. It's just the fact that you're trying to communicate. It might not always come out the way you want it to, but that's how we practice. We just keep practicing and being that role model for other people.
It's
yeah,
funny
I like
because
what you said about like the different people too, because I think sometimes people grow up in like small towns where everyone kind of maybe thinks the same or is culturally similar, things like that. And then going to college is a very different experience when you're surrounded by a lot of different people from a lot of different places, and understanding that people had different ways of growing up and their way of setting boundaries or what they think a boundary should be could be different than what you were taught, and kind of understanding that and like meeting in the middle is important.
I always had a hard time telling people to leave my room. Everyone in college always wanted to hang out in my room. I guess I don't know. I had the right lights and the right music or something. And I always was like, how do I tell them to leave without being mean?
Exactly. Yeah, no, at the beginning of the year, I would literally just like get in bed and be like, all right, I'm going to sleep now. Like, get out.
What did you say, Lauren?
I've been accused of being way too blunt, but honestly, it's getting point across. And I don't think I'm being rude. I just think I'm saying what I feel. And if you're offended that I don't want you in my room, that's your own problem. And if you don't want it to happen again, don't overstay your welcome. Like, I don't know. I like to be, but
So Freya, how do we draw the line between being too blunt and being, what would it be called, a self advocate, right?
Yeah, you want to assert yourself, and you want to count them. You want to say, guys, thank you for coming over. This has been really a lot of fun, but I'm tapped out now. My energy is done and I need my alone time. So again, thank you for coming. I had a great time with you guys. And it's time to go. It's awkward sometimes, right? But you want to sort of sandwich it. You want to sandwich it with like some gratitude for them before you express your needs. You give them some gratitude in there. It seems to soften it up a little bit.
Do you, Lauren, do you feel like with someone, since it sounds like you're the one with the strongest boundaries here. So do you find yourself being hyper aware of other people's boundaries?
I think so. Maybe. I don't want to like assume this about myself. But I don't know if I'm like immediately aware of their boundaries, but I do put an effort to either understand or acknowledge them if I notice something. And especially this year, I put in an effort to like ask people if it was okay if I like touch their arm or something, or like even if they had like a hair on their shirt, I was like, is it okay if I take this hair off your shirt? Because like not everyone wants you just in their personal space. So, and I'm like that. So why shouldn't I do the same for others?
And it's, you know what? I just want to say something there, because sometimes we can ask permission, but sometimes people don't have a very good ability. Like, do you mind if I touch this hair as I'm moving to take this hair from you? Right? Like it's a very simple example, but there could be other things where we're asking permission and the person's like, oh yeah, of course, no problem. Meanwhile, maybe they might not have felt comfortable about it. But again, it's up to people to express that, and we don't always know what people are thinking or feeling. And I know with you, Lauren, you mentioned something there really important, which was, hey, if you don't like it, my boundaries, that's not my problem, right? Like the way you feel about that, and that's an emotional boundary, is not taking on the emotions of other people as yours, and like it's your problem, because that's what really holds us back from setting boundaries.
That's interesting.
No,
So you may
I say
ask
that
someone
doesn't
permission.
always follow it. I say that I don't always follow it, but we're trying.
Yeah. We're never going to be perfect at boundaries, okay? Just so you know, there's no perfect person who's like, wow, the boundary queen. No, we're all practicing. We're all in a state of practice.
So I had someone told me the other day that no is a complete sentence, right? You don't always owe someone an explanation, but sometimes does it feel does it feel rude to people, like to just say that? What does everybody think? Just like say no and just walk away? Anyone want to jump in? No?
I can go first. Yeah, I definitely, like Fraya was mentioning, like at the very beginning, empaths kind of are very sensitive to other people's emotions, and so when I feel like I'm going to upset someone, I'm very cautious about that. So I often feel the need to give an explanation, even if I don't even have one. Like just try and make something up, or like try and make something up that will like be good for the other person, if that makes sense. Like going back to like the room example, I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I just really have to study for this test, even if I don't, because that seems like a good reason to kick somebody out, instead of it just being like, I'm tired of socializing today, like please get out. So yeah, I think that working on no as a complete sentence is definitely one of my tasks for this upcoming year.
Jesse, I see you nodding in agreement.
It's because I completely feel and agree with Natalie. It's something we got to work on. I think it's a lot about intention, of, I guess, the action that incites the boundary.
Right.
I work at a camp. Some of the kids like to be held and picked up, and some don't. My intention is typically just to make sure they're having fun. Some kids like to be physically stimulated, and if a kid doesn't convey that to me and I pick them up without knowing, some of them sometimes start crying. And my intention isn't to hurt, and we're able to repair our relationship. However, if it's coming from a bad place, I don't feel any need to explain why I said no. In terms of sexual assault, if I say no, it means no. And if it's anything related to that, the intention that incites it what crossed a boundary and crossed a line a little too far to where I don't need an explanation. My intention was good with the 5-year-old. We were able to talk it out. The kid likes hugs and stuff. He just doesn't like to be picked up. So we were able to talk it out, talked with his parents, and just doesn't like getting picked up. And my intention was good. And so I was able to explain. And I think that's where the difference is, what the intention was and how it was received as well. Because if you don't know, then you don't know. And you ask by learning. And now I ask before I pick a 5-year-old up.
Right. Well, I think we can all agree that when it comes to sexual boundaries, that no obviously should mean no matter what. But I think time, giving of your time and your emotional self is sometimes difficult for the empath. Lauren, I cut you off, Lauren.
Yeah, you're good. Sorry, we keep talking over each other. One thing Jesse brought up was the person's intention versus how someone perceives it. So just because someone intends for it to be a good thing, it's still not a good thing if the person perceives it as something very bad, because your own interpretation of what you're doing, you think it's okay to do that. And this doesn't just have to be like, oh, I touched your arm. It could be something more serious. And if your intention in your mind is completely okay to do this, and it comes off perceived as that is definitely not okay. I don't know how to finish that sentence, but there is a difference between that.
Freya, what do you think about what Lauren just said?
Just really, there's two parts. Well, there's a few parts to boundaries: the setting your own boundaries, respecting other people's boundaries, and then the consequences when the boundaries aren't followed, that sometimes we're subjected to, or sometimes that we're enacting on others, and that intention, right? So really recognizing, oh crap, like it wasn't my intention to do this at all. Clearly we're having a different perception here, but I want to come from the intention to learn, right? I always want to come from the intention to learn instead of that intention to protect, always coming from that intention to learn. You can't lose with that.
Everybody's nodding their head. Natalie, what do you think about what Freya just said?
Yeah, I mean, I think just remembering that, like she said, that nobody's perfect with boundaries and we're all learning is really important. Because, this is a totally different subject, but it just reminded me of something I saw on TikTok where it was about how our parents are learning too. Like, they haven't been parents before, like you and your siblings. So they're still learning how to be parents, and they're still learning about boundaries in that sense. And sometimes, like, I know as a teenager specifically, it's really hard to remember that all the time. And it's really easy to get frustrated when they cross your boundaries because they don't understand and all that kind of stuff. But something I'm working on is just remembering that they're still learning too.
Actually, speaking of parental boundaries, I'm just curious, does anyone here have what's it called, Life 360 on their phone? And Jesse, you do. Oh, and Lauren too. And Natalie doesn't. So do you feel like that's your parents crossing a boundary that you're not comfortable with, or have you come to terms with it?
I've accepted it. I understand the intent is for my parents to always know where I am in case they need anything or they want to make sure I'm safe, especially if I'm coming home late at night, which is, again, typically from work. They want to make sure, if my phone, not if my phone dies, but if my car breaks down or anything, they can automatically see. And sometimes it does feel like an invasion of privacy. Plus, it drains my phone battery. But I understand it's coming from a good place, and that they won't judge me. I think this comes with trust, and they trust me not to abuse it, and not to like abuse any privacy. It's not like they're madly checking it, but they just want to make sure I'm safe, and that's where they're coming from. And I trust them to not punish me or to not judge me if I'm doing something that they don't deem acceptable. I trust them to realize that I'm going to learn from my actions, which typically involves going 5 miles over the speed limit, and just stuff like that. We're working on it. Live, laugh, love life 360.
And Lauren, what do you think about Life 360?
I think I use more than my mom to check her location, but
Okay.
I think it's helpful when you're like, when is this person getting home? Or they were supposed to run an errand. How far away are they from me? But like you said, like a car breaking down, I got in a car crash with someone else. I was not the driver. And it immediately sent a message saying car crash.
It knew you were in a crash?
Helpful. And yeah, it knew I was in a crash.
Abruptly stopped.
And yeah, it tallies your like hard stops and your fast accelerations and stuff. So I think it's helpful in that sense. I don't really go anywhere because I don't have a car. So I don't know. I also live on this really big mountain. So unless I wanted to hike for quite a few miles, I couldn't sneak out anywhere. Which, I wouldn't do that anyway. So, yeah, I guess just the trust is important, but I do think there's some usefulness in that.
Fraya, what tools can kids use to deal? Because obviously parental boundaries for a kid, right? It's hard because they're your parents. So you have to obviously accept that fact, but kids still want to have some sort of boundary. So what tools or tips or what is your advice to kids usually when it comes to this type of thing?
Yeah. And I don't coach a lot of kids, but I have one. And I can imagine if you're a kid who has parents who are very controlling and don't have any respect for your boundaries. And when you try to communicate one, like, if you're upset and you go into your room and they just open the door and bust in there and say, we need to talk about this now. And you're like, no, I need some space and I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk. And if they keep, disempowering you, that doesn't make for a good connection with your parents. So I can imagine that you're going to have a real hard time gaining trust from them. Never mind them being able to trust you. There's also this trust that we want to have with our parents, that we can trust that, they trust that we're going to make good choices and that we're going to let them know when we need them. So, I mean, I can imagine that if you had parents that were oblivious to the idea of having boundaries, that's going to be really difficult to navigate. And I mean, I would hope that you would have other supports in your life at school or friends parents that you could talk to just to get some validation and really got to tough that time period of your life out.
Would we have a good question from YouTube, and if anyone else that's watching has any questions, just put them in the chat and we can discuss it. How do you Freya, I want you to answer last. I want the rest of the kids to answer first. What about the guilt? How do you set healthy boundaries without feeling the guilt? Natalie, I'll let you respond to the question first.
Oh God, yeah. See, this is not something I've mastered yet.
Okay.
So I don't really have a good answer on this, honestly. The only thing I know how to do is deal with the guilt, and try and remind myself that that it's not usually based in reality. Like the person isn't usually like upset with me or anything like that. It's usually just kind of something that I'm projecting. But I don't know how to set a boundary without having the guilt in the first place, if I'm being honest.
Jesse, what's your guilt relief strategy?
I kind of feel the same as Natalie. However, when I'm trying to have a serious conversation with someone about a boundary, I try to be as open and honest as I can. And at the very least, at the end of the day, if I'm feeling guilty, I can say, well, the truth is out there, and I don't feel guilty about telling the truth. I may feel guilty for hurting their feelings. And if the truth is coming from a bad place, which it really never is, then I don't really feel the guilt afterwards, if that makes sense.
Okay. Lauren, what's your mountaintop philosophy?
If it's a serious conversation, I don't, well, okay. For all of my boundaries, I view them all as serious. But if it's like a life-threatening boundary, I usually do not feel guilt about putting out what I have to say. There are a lot of times where I get judged because of my boundaries, which kind of makes me feel guilty, because I feel like people think I have like too many or my boundaries are stupid. When in reality, my boundaries, they're very serious for me, like I said. So I think it's just reminding yourself of why you have the boundary in the first place, what it's doing to help you. I think that helps ease your any worried feelings, any guilty feelings, because you're understanding and connecting with the original purpose of what you've said.
Freya, what do you usually tell people? To deal with the guilt or to accept it? Or how do you remove it? Or what's the
opposite of guilt? What would you say is the opposite of guilt?
Anybody?
Maybe acceptance.
Google says innocence.
Yeah.
Innocence. Oh, yeah. That's a different type of guilt.
Yeah, I love that you Googled that. Yeah, I'm guilty. Guilty for what? Like, am I on trial right now?
Right.
I'm taking care of myself. I don't need to feel guilty for taking care of my needs. And that word innocence, we can use the term good faith. I'm acting in good faith here, right? I'm communicating this boundary because I'm looking out for myself, and I'm communicating this boundary to you because you matter to me, and I want to continue a healthy relationship with you. And healthy boundaries equal healthy relationships. So at first, setting boundaries, you're going to feel the guilt. That's so normal because it's out of your comfort zone to all of a sudden, wow, now I'm telling people what my needs are and how I want them to treat me and what I tolerate and what I don't tolerate. And this sounds all a little bit much. And, oh, should I feel guilty for this? But I'm coming from a good place because I'm coming from taking care of myself. So initially, yeah, you feel it. But the more and more you practice it, the less and less guilty you feel. You start to own that. And, it becomes an emotional boundary too, where they're probably feeling guilty because they've crossed your boundary. Sometimes if somebody tells us, hey, you know what? I don't like it when you call me that name. Oh, I'm sorry. And I feel guilty because I crossed someone's boundary and they're letting me know. And so as empathic people, we might feel the guilt that they're feeling. Oh. And so we have to really set those emotional boundaries. They're allowed. That's healthy guilt, right? There's two kinds of guilt. Healthy guilt. You've actually done something wrong. You've made a mistake. You own it. You take responsibility for it. You apologize for it. You make sure it doesn't happen again. But unhealthy guilt is the guilt that you feel when you haven't done anything wrong. And so deciphering between those two things is really going to be helpful.
Okay. Now, I'm curious, how do you balance? Because it seems like everybody's, we're on some sort of, we're somewhere on the empathic spectrum, right? All of us have some sort of caring, we all have some sort of caringness in us. So how do you balance between, yourself and trying to be that good person that cares for others, right? Without, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Jesse, how do you strike that balance?
That's a really good question and something I'm trying to figure out myself. I think of the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. So you always got to take care of yourself first before you take care of others. My youngest brother has autism. And so I've been volunteering a lot with people with autism for a very long time. And I noticed that I can't be present in like helping others and being with them and really enjoying the time I spend with them unless I'm enjoying myself and I'm happy with who I am. Because if I'm not happy with who I am, then I'm going to project it onto others. And I don't feel like that's fair to them or like anyone.
Natalie, where do you strike your balance best?
Yeah, I love that saying as well. Another really good one that I've heard is that self-care is community service. Because I do a lot of activism, very involved in politics and stuff like that. And it's the same idea that you need to take care of yourself before you take care of others, or else the work you're going to be doing is not going to be as effective. And especially when you're working directly with other people, like Jesse said, like they can kind of feel that energy. And if something's off with you, it's going to come across. If you're not able to give your best self, then you're not going to be helping them as much as you would like to. And I think that's something that's really helped me in kind of my mental health journey, is that I tend to put others above myself. But when I think about it in this framework of like, okay, well, what's really important to me? What's important is helping other people, but I can't do that unless I help myself first. So I think that's really helped me, and probably helps a lot of other people that are interested in the same kind of things.
Lauren, what are your thoughts on this?
It's very similar to what they've said, but I came to the realization a little earlier on about when you choose to put your mental health first, it is not because you do not care about someone. It's saying, I care so much about you that I've been hurting myself to try and get you better. And because I now have to help myself back up. But it's not that you don't care about that person. You're hurting yourself trying to get them. I did a lot of, about 7th grade, I started speaking out for suicide awareness and prevention. And when that happened, a lot of peers started coming to me with their mental health struggles. And as a 7th grader, that's hard to deal with all of these people coming to you. And I had people texting me at like 3 a.m. saying that, they wanted to die. And I felt that I was responsible for having to talk them down. And I was like, I cannot be your therapist, and I am not qualified to be your therapist. So it's guiding them to a more professional support, but still being there as a friend. But setting that boundary of I love you and I care about you, but I can only do so much before I have to focus on me.
Right. Well, and we talked about this before the show. For anyone watching, there as of this month in the U.S., you can call 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, or it's also a crisis line. You can also, I'm pretty sure you can text them. So if you need any help, don't call Lauren. Call 988. And I think Freya, you said there's a similar number in Canada. You said it was 211. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it is a mental health line. I don't know the specific suicide prevention hotline, but
So there's
It
lots of
also exists in the U.S. too. It'll connect you to like local, at least in Connecticut, I know for sure. It'll connect you to like local social workers and other people that will like literally come to your house.
Oh, okay, that's good.
I
Freya,
believe
what's your
the 98. Sorry, I believe the
No, go ahead.
988 also can be used for substance for problems with substances and wider mental health, but I think the focus is suicide.
Freya, what's your reaction to all this, the balance discussion we have here?
yeah, the balance is key, right? And we can have high levels of energy where, ooh, our cup is full and let me just give and give and give. Look at me, I'm so ready. But then you deplete yourself again and then you shut down. And who knows how long that shutdown goes on until you replenish your energy again. And then you go back out and go full out. And so this is not sustainable, right? You're going to end up being burnt out. There's also something called compassion fatigue that people can experience over the course of time. And there's a wonderful saying, care, but don't carry. So I'm going to care for all of this. I'm going to have so much compassion for you, but I'm not going to carry it like it's my own. I mean, the example that Lauren gave where, someone's on a suicide hotline and they're talking about, harming themselves and she can't, rescue them. No one really can. You can put them off to someone else and feel like you've done your part. But some people will still carry that. And they will still feel like, oh, I could have done something more. Oh, I should have said this. Oh, I said the wrong thing. Was that the right thing to do? And have all this uncertainty that they still ruminate about. So at the end of the day, we need to recognize that as much as we would love to go full on with people when we're at those high levels of energy, we need to learn to just take it back a little bit. Sometimes the things that we do that we think are just minimal is everything for people. We don't always have to go all out to help people. Sometimes just holding space for someone, just listening, not solving their problems. It's not my responsibility to solve your problems, but I'll listen. So that term, I'll care, but I'm not going to carry this. Because empaths, we feel things very deeply as if it's our own. Whereas other people, they just have general empathy and compassion. They don't take it on like their own, like we do, and it gets us into trouble sometimes. So we want to practice extra self-care. We need more self-care than other people. Sensitive people, we just really do. And so don't deny yourself of that. Setting boundaries is that highest form of self-care for yourself.
Okay, great. Thanks. So I want to just touch on a little bit of a lighter subject now, which is the stigma of the text stigma, right? Of leaving someone on read. So what about texting boundaries, right? How do you deal with those? Because I know people give me the hardest time. Well, I send you a message, but you left me on read for like 3 days. So how do you deal with text boundaries and other similar things like that?
Yeah, I think it's also a big thing with other forms of social media as well. Like constantly feeling need for like to open people's Snapchats or view people's stories and stuff like that. And something with me is that I set the boundary where I'm like, especially when I'm not having a good mental health day, I want to be off social media totally. I'll just say that to my friends. And they all understand that means I'm just not going to answer them. And that could be like a day that I'm not answering them. It could be a few days. And thankfully, I have very understanding people in my life. And I think that's an important part, is making sure that the people you're surrounding yourself with understand like what you're going through, who you are, and stuff like that. And that helps a lot, because no one in your life should say, oh no, you shouldn't take a mental health day. Like, if that kind of person is in your life, you should get them out. But yeah, that's what I do.
Jesse, where are your texting and social media?
This is the one thing I love about my jobs. When I am working, I'm not talking to you. Like, it gives me a chance, although they're not the most fulfilling mentally jobs, it gives me a chance to take a break from the rest of the world and focus on what's happening. And also priorities. I feel like that's a big thing. Social media doesn't really affect my mental health as much as it does for other people. And so I personally don't take social media breaks. However, if I don't want to text someone back, I won't. I feel no guilt. Your text, unless it's urgent, is not a priority for me. And if it's urgent, you can call me. And I really do communicate that with all my friends. I'm like, by the way, if you ever need me, call me. Because I'm pretty much always working or doing something that your text is not my first priority. However, I am, again, care, not caring, which is a great saying, by the way.
I like that.
So if you need me, just call me and I'll be there for you. But if it's not urgent, not that you're a second priority in my life, you're a priority to me, just not right now. Not right now.
Lauren, do you feel guilt when you leave people on red?
I am not in the mood, or I don't have time to respond to people. I don't open the message to begin with, because usually
you just leave them on
before I
delivered.
even
That's
open
even worse, right?
Yes. No, I think that is so much better, because it's like, if you've left them on red, then that's like, oh, well, they don't care enough to respond, which isn't true. It's just, the thought process. Anyway, I think it's better to leave on delivered, so that you can give a well thought out and a response when you are mentally ready to give them a response. So it doesn't have to be this like really short, dry text like, okay. It's just, you have more time to think. And for most platforms, you have ways to open the message without showing you've read it. So I know on Snapchat and regular messages, you can do that. I don't know about Insta. I'm also not tech savvy. So if someone knows how, teach me. But you just don't open the message if you're not ready to respond.
I think that these young ladies have more insight into this than I do, because I struggle with it. What do you think, Fraya?
You know what? It's great. And you're right, Lauren. I don't subscribe to read receipts. If someone's like putting read receipts on me, I think you can only do that in emails, right? You check that you read your emails, but on social media, no. And on my iMessages, no. I don't want you to know that I've read it. We don't need that.
Oh, so you just disable it. You just disable it.
Yeah, I disable the read. And the whole notion of, oh, they left you on red. Ooh, you were left on red.
Isn't there like a song about that, right?
Like, this is only in this day and age that we have this feature now. It's like, so what if they left you on red? Like, let's redefine what that means. It means maybe they got a life and they got something else going on. Like Jesse was saying, like nothing is urgent. Okay, if it's so urgent, call 911. And if someone's gonna be getting on my case about, why didn't you text me back? Hello, are you there? Did you text me back yet? Okay, this is somebody who has poor boundaries. You know that this is someone who has poor boundaries. Okay, I'm gonna have compassion for you that you're still learning, and I'm gonna have a conversation with you and let you know you can't always expect me to reply right away to your messages. That's it, right? And if it continues, This is where your consequence comes in. Remember I said, you can always expect me to reply to your messages right away. I'm not always by my phone, even if I am. So,
Right.
and then you're gonna get to know who the people are that respect your boundaries and who the people are that don't.
See, I feel like if you give them the red receipt, then that's just acknowledging, yeah, I read it. You saw that it says read, so you know I read it, and I'll respond when I'm ready to. Otherwise, that is my response. I got it.
Yep. I just don't subscribe to the read receipts at all. That's my
I
rigid
noticed. I
boundary.
texted you and I didn't see that you read it, so I was very furious with you.
Oh yeah. You just kept that to yourself, though. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't tell you. I carried that with me.
Right.
So great. So was it Fraya? Was there anything else that you thought we should talk about that we haven't touched on yet?
I think this is brilliant. Lauren, Natalie, and Jesse, you guys have a really great handle on this conversation because like I said, there's some people that have no clue what boundaries even are. So when I posted this to my Instagram stories, I'm like, this is for all ages. Okay. Because this is the kids are talking, the teens are talking, but people in their 40s and 50s that I'm sure if they're listening to this, they're learning from you guys. You're being an inspiration to others who were brought up with no clue that you can take care of your own needs. You're allowed to do that. Oh my gosh, it's okay. And one other thing I want to say, Michael, is that when you do express your boundaries and you're communicating your needs, that's you being authentic. You're being real. And if you really want to capture that essence of your authentic, true self over the course of, your years in your life, setting boundaries is a way to do that.
So do you I'm talking to the panel here. Do people feel like does everyone feel like they're being their authentic self? Lauren, do you think you're being your authentic self?
I think so. I think. Sure.
Okay. That's a good answer. Then that's
Sure.
the right answer. Natalie?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I've worked really hard to do that. And I think I am being my authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse, I know your answer is going to be yes.
Yeah, this is me. However, if you told me 4 years ago, or even like a year ago, 9 months ago, that I would be saying this advice and actually applying it in my own life, I wouldn't believe you. It's come a long way. So the boundaries come as you decide you need more boundaries or realize you need more boundaries.
Well, I just have to say that in response to you, Fraya, I mean, I do Kids Are Talking, and I know, it's kids. I'm doing my air quotes. It's Kids Are Talking, but I actually learn so much from all the kids that are on the show. And kids, we use that term obviously loosely. I'm still a kid sometimes, but I love hearing the young insight. It's inspiring. A lot of the times the panelists know more about things than I do. And I have great co-hosts like you, Fraya, come on and have great insight and advice for everyone. So I really enjoy doing this. I just we're wrapping up the show. So I just go around and everybody, just give me your recap on, what your advice is to people that are watching now and that are going to watch the replay. And people that may catch us on our Instagram reels later, what did you take out of the show, and what do you think people should take home from it? So I'll start with you, Jesse.
I really liked what Natalie said earlier about don't expect other people to read your mind. And at the same time, you got to communicate. You'll learn, and mistakes, they can be made. And as long as you're honest and communicate it properly, you can always take it back, change your boundaries, and see what works for you.
Great. Lauren, what's your takeaway from the day?
I think it's important to remember you have your boundaries set for a certain reason. So whenever you need to enforce them, you don't need to feel guilty because it is doing something to help you. And sometimes there's when you're a kid, you don't always have a say in what's going on in your life. So finding people like adults that you can communicate with, say these are what my boundaries are, so they can help you get out of situations you don't want to be in. I think that's important.
Great advice. Natalie?
Yeah, and I'd never heard of the term healthy guilt before, so I really liked that. And I'm definitely going to think a lot more about that. And I also really liked, like, you can care but not carry it. I think I'm also going to take that with me. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one. I think we're gonna have to keep that one in the back pocket for future advice. Great. Fraya, thank you so much for coming. What is your closing remark for everybody that's watching? What should we be taking home from this?
Yeah, just know that practice doesn't make perfect. Okay, practice makes progress. So keep practicing, keep being a role model for healthy boundaries, and keep having compassion for those that are still learning about boundaries.
Great. Well, Fraya, thank you so much. And anyone that wants to hear more from Fraya, you can follow her on Instagram or TikTok at Empathic Coach, or you can find her website, freetobeyoucoaching.com, I believe, and reach out to her for her amazing advice. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And we will see you next time on Kids Are Talking.